Hi, I'm not dead. At least I hope I'm not at this point. Just wanted to let you know that I've been very busy the last couple of weeks and last 2 months doing a bunch of different things for a various array of different reasons. One of the biggest things I did last month was I did Inktober, and if you're interested in seeing all the stuff that I did, you can either go to my Twitter or you could watch the video down in the description, which is the 20-minute long compilation of all of the time lapses I did for all of those illustrations. I want to start off by letting you know that this is a bit of a different video from my typical story surgery formula. Don't panic. These are not a replacement. These are more just of a thing that I've been planning on doing for a while, and I just kind of want to test the waters and see how they fare out. That being said, roll that new fancy acoustic intro. Hello, and welcome to Story Surgery Diagnosis, a smaller video series talking about recent media as a means to discuss the ins and outs of what makes that media work or not work. It's like a video review, but rather than just saying something is good or bad, I want to talk about the hows and whys with you and discuss what it means going forward. Today we're going to be talking about Disney's recent film, The Nutcracker in the Four Realms, and why Disney making this film really wasn't a good idea to begin with, and why this kind of thing matters when doing adaptations and reimaginings. First off, here's the synopsis for The Nutcracker in the Four Realms. Clara needs a magical, one-of-a-kind key to unlock a box that contains a priceless gift. A gold thread leads her to the coveted key, but soon disappears into a magical and mysterious parallel world. In this world, she meets a soldier named Philip, a group of mice, and the regents who preside over the three realms. Clara and Philip must now enter the fourth realm to retrieve the key and restore harmony to this unstable land. From the reviews that were pouring in ever since the movie debuted, it's very much understood that the film was unsatisfying, if not borderline forgettable when it comes to the giant catalog of Disney films that they've had over the years. Apparently, it even managed to miss out on the popular Christmas-themed movie as well. Today, I wanted to take this opportunity to discuss why this probably was. To understand the Nutcracker as a story, we need to go back to its roots, in which case we need to talk about the German author Ernst Theodor Amadeus Hoffmann, or E.T.A. Hoffmann for short, and his original story, The Nutcracker and the Mouse King. Written in 1816, this is your standard Christmas tale. In this case, you're talking about a story that is fairly old retrospectively. Nutcrackers in and of themselves have always been a tradition since the 17th century in Germany as a Christmas gift. It's the reason why they're associated with Christmas at all. E.T.A. Hoffmann essentially took that idea and turned it into a Christmas story, theming it towards the holiday that we know, while having little changes here and there to make it so it's now understood as to why nutcrackers are given as gifts. It's the story you pretty much know, although little details change over time through the countless iterations you may have seen. While I encourage everyone to read the original story by Hoffmann for themselves, you can skip to this particular timestamp in the video if you feel like you already know the story well enough. Alright, if you're sticking around, here's my super condensed summary of Hoffmann's The Nutcracker and the Mouse King. Oh boy. It's Christmas time in the Stahlbaum house. Marie, our main character, and her siblings are visited by their godfather, Drosselmeyer, who is a well-known inventor and toy maker. Drosselmeyer gives a nutcracker to Marie as a gift for Christmas. Marie's brother wants to try out the nutcracker, but breaks the nutcracker's jaw on a nut that's too hard to crack. Marie bandages up the nutcracker and places him in the toy cabinet along with the other toys and dolls, and stays with him into the night. At midnight, the grandfather clock in the living room chimes, and Marie is shocked to see her godfather sitting atop of it, stopping the clock from chiming. Just then, mice arise from between the floorboards, being led by a seven-headed Mouse King. The toys in the cabinet come to life and, led by the Nutcracker, are able to keep the mice army at bay. While the Nutcracker is about to be taken captured by the Mouse King, Marie removes one of her slippers and throws it at the Mouse King, knocking him back into the floorboards. Marie falls unconscious and cuts her arm on the broken glass of the toy cabinet door. When she awakens, no one believes her story. Her godfather returns with the Nutcracker, who has managed to fix his jaw. He tells Marie about a particular story about why nutcrackers look the way that they do. Long ago, there was a beautiful princess who was cursed by a Mouse King to be uncomfortably ugly, a large head, giant mouth, and long flowing beard. The king ordered the court inventor, who also happened to be named Drosselmeyer, to find a cure. The cure was found within the Krakatuk nut, which had to be bitten open and given to the princess by a young man with his eyes closed. Drosselmeyer's nephew was able to bite it open and give the nut to the princess, and after eating it, she turned back into her notable, beautiful self. But just as the king is about to give his daughter's hand in marriage to the nephew, the Mouse Queen jumps out, and just as she placed the curse upon the nephew, she was crushed underneath his shoe. The nephew now grew a large head, the giant mouth, and long flowing beard, accepting the curse that was once placed upon the princess. Ungratefully, the princess now has the nephew banished for being too hideous to look at, calling him an ugly nutcracker. Marie is disheartened by this story, calling the princess a brat who feels bad for the nutcracker, realizing that he was Drosselmeyer's cursed nephew. That night, the Mouse King returns and demands that Marie gives him all of her sweets, or he'll chew the nutcracker to pieces. While the Mouse King is distracted, the nutcracker comes to life and asks Marie for a sword. Marie takes a sword from her brother's toy soldiers and gives it to the nutcracker, and with it, the nutcracker is able to defeat the Mouse King. The nutcracker then whisks Marie away to the kingdom of the dolls, a marvelous place beyond imagination. While being told stories from the nutcracker and receiving gifts from people of the kingdom, Marie falls into a gentle sleep and awakens in her home. Even though she has the 7 crowns of the Mouse King, no one believes her story. When she tells her godfather that she would love the nutcracker no matter what he looked like, there was a sudden loud fire of cannons, and the announcement that Drosselmeyer's nephew had arrived from far away. The nephew demonstrated his skill of being able to take any kind of nut, place it in his mouth, and by pulling his own ponytail, was able to crack the nut open. He gifted the Stahlbaum family with a variety of different gifts and jewelry, and gave Marie's brother a sword, much like the one that his toy soldiers had. The nephew tells Marie that her claim to love him no matter his appearance is what returned him to his human form. He dropped to one knee and asked for her hand in marriage, to which she blissfully accepts. Within a year, he returns for her and takes her away to his kingdom, a wondrous place that you could only imagine in your wildest dreams. Now, if this version of the Nutcracker seems a little different to you, fear not, because you're not the only one. Most versions of the Nutcracker that most people would know off the top of their heads would be more in line with what was seen on the stage version of the Nutcracker ballet. While Hoffman is credited for the story, it's actually gone through several iterations over a long period of time. Most commonly in the ballet, the main character is renamed to Clara, and Drosselmeyer's story of the hard nut to crack, which explains why the Nutcracker looks the way that they do, is sometimes completely removed, in favor of keeping the story more cohesive and understandable for a wordless performance, such as a ballet. In fact, most people only know the story of the Nutcracker through the ballet performance, and while that's perfectly fine understanding for witnessing the story of the Nutcracker, it really is a shame because you could possibly missing out on crucial elements of the story that make the Nutcracker so important. While yes, the musical score of Tchaikovsky has become revolutionary and is one of the strongest staples that ties you to the Christmas season, the ballet more often than not tends to only tell the story of our protagonist, which can lose a lot of its value when the character of the Nutcracker, to which the story is named after, is being lost to interpretation or his backstory is completely removed. Now, with that being said, if you're going to retell, remake, or even reimagine the concept and story of the Nutcracker, there are a few things that you should really try to keep around in order to make sure that you keep the heart and moral of the story. First and foremost, no matter what anyone says, this is a Christmas tale. Whether you like it or not, whether or not you even like Christmas or not, there is no ability to remove it away from the Christmas season, because this is a story that is about Christmas and in turn the wonder of the season. Trying to shift it to another season or a different holiday completely breaks the ideals of the story. It is a story that was made because of how nutcrackers were given as Christmas gifts. Trying to twist it into being something else breaks that kind of momentum. Trying to shift it around to any other point during the year just wouldn't make any sense. Secondly, you need to have Drosselmeyer, Clara, or Marie, depending on how you exactly want to name our protagonist, the Nutcracker, and the Mouse King. These 4 characters are crucial for telling these particular stories. Drosselmeyer is the one who acts the most important to the actual progression of the plot because he is the one who presents the inciting incident, giving the Nutcracker to the protagonist. While it's obvious to some that you'd want to keep Clara or Marie around in the story, it's also about making sure that her character and motives are kept as simple and as direct as they possibly can be. Trying to warp her perception of things or try to change her character and characteristics around means that you're going to lose what she was as a character. And for the Nutcracker and the Mouse King, these two have to do battle. They have to have some kind of conflict between one another. Trying to remove them or move them as something else or completely reimagining them from the ground up to where they're no longer recognizable is what's going to break the story the most. You need to keep some of these characters as close to their original incarnation as possible in order to maintain the momentum and the point of the story. Lastly, and I feel like this one's usually debated, the land, or the kingdom of the dolls, is a place that is visited at the end of the story and acts as a narrative reward to the protagonist for doing good deeds and helping the Nutcracker achieve their goal. We as audience members should not be witnessing the kingdom of the dolls early on in the story. This place is supposed to be beyond our expectation, and throwing us in there at the very beginning means that we already get to witness it, which means that the hype and satisfaction of being able to work our way there alongside our protagonist means that we lose out on some of the magic and wonder of what this place can be. So let's take a moment and talk about why some adaptations of the Nutcracker work very well. Simply put, they knew what to keep around. They knew what elements of the original story by Hoffman were crucial in order to keep the heart of the story more relatable, but still have an impact on the main protagonist in a way that the whole adventure becomes so much more endearing. When it comes to Nutcracker films, I'm sure that everyone has their own personal selection for nostalgic reasons or other various reasons. I am no different. One of my personal favorite iterations of the Nutcracker to this day is the 1990 Canadian animated film entitled The Nutcracker Prince. It was a version of the Nutcracker that I watched as far back as I can remember, and it was single-handedly the reason why I wanted to see the Nutcracker Ballet every Christmas. I'm glad that now, as a grown-up story person, I can look back on this version of the Nutcracker and say it's one of the most faithful retellings of Hoffman's story. Sure, there are a good handful of changes that they've done here and there, but realistically, all they do is streamline the story to make it so that it happens a little bit more cohesively, if not a little quicker. In the original story, the whole course of the story happens over several days. In the Nutcracker Prince, it happens across 3 days: Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and the day after Christmas. Uncle Drosselmeyer tells the story of the hard nut to crack to our main character on the first day, right after the brother breaks the Nutcracker's jaw. These kinds of things work in a positive way because it slims down the amount of stuff that is happening during the film and makes it more consumable for the audience. I personally recommend it, and thankfully, at the time of this video going live, the video is available to watch on YouTube, and I'll have a link to it in the description for your viewing pleasure. I really hope you enjoy it as much as I do. With that being said, we also need to talk about why some, if not most, adaptations of the Nutcracker break, pun intended. And unfortunately, it can be answered pretty simply. The people making these versions decided to add way too much to the story, making it too complicated than it needed to be, or they cut out too much from the original Hoffman story, warping it into a much longer version than really was necessary for a retelling or even a reimagining. With all of that said, it begs the question, how does Disney's Nutcracker film not work as a retelling or reimagining of the Nutcracker story? Well, it kind of boils down to 4 really big problems. Firstly, the particular character that is referred to as Nutcracker, you know, the titular character that the story is named after, yeah, he's not actually a Nutcracker. He's just called one. How do you mess that up? You had one job. The story is called The Nutcracker, and it should have an actual plot-centric character of the Nutcracker in the movie that is a Nutcracker. Just because you call a character a Nutcracker does not make them one. Heck, I could go around telling everyone that I'm E.T.A. Hoffman, but that doesn't make me E.T.A. Hoffman, that's just me claiming that I am. Know the difference. Secondly, and I'm sure there are probably a few of you who will roll your eyes really hard when you hear this particular sentence, according to the trailer, it informs us that this is the legend you know, and then makes the claim that it has a dark side. Because of course, the classic story we've been hearing countless generations upon countless generations has a version we've never known about until now. Cue the long, drawn-out sigh of frustration. That's right, folks. This is also known as the untold story trope, a tactic used only to get people to watch a film because now, miraculously, it's a version that we've never heard of or even knew existed. Come on, Disney, you're better than this. Third, the story found inside of Nutcracker in the Four Realms is freakishly way too complicated with backstory, exposition, and convoluted plot points for a Nutcracker story. There are way too many things going on, way too many characters to remember, too many plot point backstory details to shovel in and keep in mind going forward. This story is not that complicated. It's the Nutcracker, not rocket science. The fourth and final problem. This story has nothing to do with Hoffman's tale. Yeah, honestly, next to nothing about this story and its narrative have any similarity. The only thing that were brought over were characters, and even then, some of them were the characters in name only. It's just pretending to be the Nutcracker while being a different story. It's a Nutcracker by title only. It's no accident when you saw the trailers for the Nutcracker in the Four Realms, you had this weird sense of understanding about what this film was going to be about. Not saying you knew every plot point bit by bit, even though sometimes it felt like you did. There was just some weird familiarity about this particular film that you couldn't put your finger on. You want to know what it was? In case you missed it, this movie wants to be Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland film so flipping much, to the point where the same narrative beats about the Nutcracker film line up with Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland film. Simply put, the other title that you could have given this movie was Alice in Wonderland, Nutcracker flavored. Look, I'm not here to criticize Alice in Wonderland. The movie is what it is, and if you enjoyed it, you enjoyed it. End of discussion. The problem is that Disney already made this movie. It's already been done. To have the movie be such a carbon copy of Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland is weird. It's unfortunate and kind of insulting, because the themes and ideas of Alice in Wonderland do not match up with Hoffman's original story of the Nutcracker and the Mouse King. They're not the same story, not even close. The only similarity that people could even imagine bringing forward is that they both have fantastical worlds to visit that are beyond your imagination. But that's where the similarities end. The protagonists getting to this fantastical world have two completely different pathways from Wonderland versus the Nutcracker. In Alice in Wonderland, Alice goes there immediately from the beginning of the story and spends the entire time there. In the Nutcracker, Marie only goes to the Kingdom of the Dolls at the end of the story. As I said before, it's a narrative reward for doing good deeds and rewarding her actions to help the Nutcracker achieve his goal. It's important to know that the Nutcracker is not designed for the Wonderland treatment. Trying to reshape it into a story that can match Wonderland twists the moral of the story around. Within the story and concept of Alice in Wonderland, it's about growth and becoming secure with oneself and finding strength in your own capabilities. The Nutcracker is a story about acceptance and loving one based not on their appearance but their actions. Trying to overlap these two ideas isn't going to work, and you're only going to have this weird hybrid of the story that doesn't fall into either category, nor has really any place as an original idea. The sad reality is that this could have been a cool original idea. It had all of the makings to be a fun twist on the Wonderland story trope, but unfortunately this film would rather trick the audience into seeing it claiming it's a classic story. That's called deception, Disney, and that's rude. Shame on you. You're better than this. Rewriting the story to have a completely different take, setting, characters, and you could have had a film that would have done decently well. It had enough new ideas to where it could have been a nice little twist on Alice in Wonderland. Though unfortunately, you're never really going to get away from the shadow of that realization that it's always going to be a Wonderland themed film. But I feel if you had just taken the time to rethink what this movie could have been, you could have had a somewhat decently well-received film. E.T.A. Hoffman's The Nutcracker and the Mouse King is a brilliantly told story about persevering in the face of fear, acceptance, and loving someone not based off of their appearance, but who they are underneath and the actions that they do. It's a story that we all know and have cherished over countless generations. While the ballet may have a couple of changes to the story that kind of makes it stumble a little bit, it's still widely beloved by millions across the world, myself included. This brings me to the end of my diagnosis, and I will leave you with my final thoughts. Trying to reimagine a classic story is something that everyone has done or thought of doing at least once or twice, and trying to do it is perfectly fine, but when you change too much of what made the original a classic, you put yourself and the story at risk. There are some ideas in this movie that could have been really well implemented to retell the story of the Nutcracker. Believe it or not, there aren't a good amount of people who have read Hoffman's original Nutcracker and the Mouse King story. So if Disney went out of their way to actually tell the original story with the magic of Disney thrown intact, you would have had an instant classic, something that people would want to see every single holiday season. At the end of the day, that's not what happened. Disney's Nutcracker and the Four Realms just completely misses the concept and idea of what made Hoffman's original story strong. Instead, they took a movie they already made, wrapped it in Nutcracker paper, and tried selling it as their own version on the classic story. Thank you for watching this very first episode of Story Surgery Diagnosis. This was definitely a stranger video to kind of put together because I basically was making it up as I went along. These videos are in no way going to replace the typical story surgery formula of me taking an idea and basically trying to rework it with a new idea and rewriting the story. These were just sort of a concept for a video that is going to happen every once in a while. Basically talking about stories that I don't think I necessarily need to give my own version on. It's me basically talking about why these particular versions should have stayed a little bit more true to the source material that they were based on, or if it is a up-and-coming show or movie or whatever have you. The whole concept of this smaller video series is basically me acting like an actual doctor and saying like, okay, you got a disease, you got a sickness, I'm gonna diagnose the problem, okay, here's the problem, here are things you should do, here are things you shouldn't do. That's my personal recommendation. After this, I have 3 normal story surgery episodes all lined up, and I already have the scripts pretty much written for all of those, so again, it's just about me sitting down and cranking it all out, because, you know, sleep, what's that? But as always, I thank you so very much for getting to the end of this video, and please let me know if you like this particular version of a story surgery video, me diagnosing something and giving my personal recommendations, rather than it just being me supplementing my own ideas. With that being said, here's this little sneak peek of what the next video could be. I'm EPZ379, and I'll see you for the next operation.
Hello? Hello? Anybody home? Well, the place looks deserted. I guess we better get out of here.
Step inside my house.